So I just want to show the main reason why I prefer Winstrip trays versus your traditional cells that you get from the stores. So these are just regular plants. You can kind of see that the growth is very similar between the two types of trays. These are vincas and these are cucumbers. So both look pretty well. Cucumbers are a little bigger, but we can at least say that they're both mature transplants. And so their root systems are going to be quite developed. So if I just take a regular tray, it doesn't really have any holes. They have minor holes on the bottom to just allow for water to come out. But if I were to just take up this root system, you see that the plant's growing and then the roots are going lower to support the plant growth. But the roots themselves will keep going, and then when they get to the bottom of the tray, they have nowhere to go. But the plant is growing, so the roots will continue to grow. And that's where the roots become balled up, as we say. So if you ever see root systems like this, I need these roots to go downward into the soil, but because they're growing so much, they then have no space to go, but they'll keep going and going until they ball themselves up. So when the plant goes into the ground, you don't have the right direction of the roots to go downward because they're all tangled, which means they then have to U-turn and go back into the soil, but they're not set up for the best success with that. So you'll have transplants, they'll work, they're fine, but they're not set up for the best success because the root system is not ready to go into the soil and go immediately into the soil and develop a much denser root system to support a growing plant. So if you use these sort of cells, typically you'll see people slice those off, so then you just have the roots going downward, or you can just sit here and kind of break up the ball like that. So I have a pretty dense root system for this sort of plant, and that's because it's allowed to grow in these sort of cells. These sort of cells do not allow oxygen really to go into there, or air really to go into there. So now I'm going to take a bigger plant and I'm going to pop this guy out, and you're going to see a root system for a Winstrip tray. You see it's, I would say, not as developed or maybe equally developed as a smaller plant. And it could be the difference of plants, obviously, but let's just come to the conclusion that the root system, even though it's a bigger plant, isn't as extensive as maybe a smaller plant is. And that's simply because the way the Winstrip trays go, they're going to keep growing. You can see that there's bottoms to these that don't have bottoms, so these are exposed to the air. And when roots hit air, they become air pruned, meaning they stop growing. It's not that they die, they just won't continue to grow in the exposure of air. They'll only keep growing when it's exposed to soil. But you see that the root growth went downward and then stopped, or it went sideways and then stopped. So this whole soil plug, all of these roots have all been air pruned, and they're not balled up anymore. They've been exposed to air, and now they're air pruned, meaning they're just dormant. They will only continue to grow if it sees or feels dirt again. So when I put this soil block into the soil, all of those roots that are in that soil block are all pointing sideways and downward, meaning they can start immediately growing. Unlike this guy where everything is balled up, it has to untangle itself and then start going downward from there. So this is the main reason why I will continue to use Winstrip trays, because it develops a root system that is much more supportive of a young plant, and a young plant that will continue to grow because the root system is set up for success to continue to grow once it goes into the soil. So highly recommend them. They are a bit expensive, but they've definitely come through for seeding and transplanting, and they're quite durable. And so if you buy any of them, you'll have them the rest of your life versus these crappy ones that are one-time use and then you throw them out. So